Hello, I'm Joe and welcome to Movies at 20, where I look back at movies that were number one at the US box office 20 years ago to this very day. This is the first video that I'm doing, and we just missed Titanic, which I love, Titanic, so yeah, kind of wish I'd done that one. But we're starting a week after Titanic. After 3.5 months, Titanic was knocked off the top spot, and it was done so by a good one. This is Lost in Space.
Beyond the frontiers of adventure.
Cool.
To find their way home.
Get us airborne.
Hang on! Lost in Space.
You might be able to see behind me some Lost in Space box sets and things from the original show. I'm a fan of it. I accept that it's a very, very silly show. I mean, Dr. Smith fights a carrot, I think, from memory, and he turns into a stick of celery. That's the kind of show we're dealing with, but early on in Lost in Space, it was a bit more serious. It was a bit more grown up, a little bit more adult before it all started to get stupid. But I like either side of that show. It's tinged in nostalgia for me. I grew up watching the repeats on Channel 4 as a kid. I loved it. I love Lost in Space. The movie, on the other hand, it's an experience. It's an experience. So, starring amongst others, William Hurt, Matt Le Blanc, who is, he's great in this film. Yeah. Mimi Rogers, Heather Graham, Lacey Chabot, Jack Johnson, Jared Harris, and Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman did this. Directed by Stephen Hopkins, off of a script by Avika Goldsman. This is my Movies at 20 review for Lost in Space. Lost in Space was number one at the US box office 20 years ago. It got there on April the 5th. It knocked Titanic off of the top spot, where it had sat there for 3.5 months, I think, maybe even more. It was a long time for Titanic, and this is the film that knocked it off. It was there for 1 week, so it didn't do very long at the top of the box office, but it got there. It is a movie that was number one. But is it any good? No. No, it's not. At all, actually. Not great. But look, let's start with what I liked. There's a few things about this I did like. I appreciate the fact that they tried to make people who were fans of the original show feel included. There was some great little bits of nostalgia. There's cameos. Maureen Robinson, it comes off the worst, I think, out of these. She gets turned into a giant monkey and things. I'm not sure how she got the short straw there. Penny Robinson shows up as well. I can't remember these actual actors' names. I could have looked them up. I didn't. Don Robinson perhaps gets the best cameo. He's there as Matt Le Blanc's boss, so he's the boss of his own old character. Judy Robinson is there as well, and perhaps best of all for me is getting the original voice of the robot back. So the new robot in this movie is voiced by the same person who did the original robot in the 60s, and there's even some nice little design quirks to him that make him a little bit similar to what that robot was, and I appreciated that because I was a kid watching Lost in Space and the robot was the best character for me. Loved his little claw hands. The robot was cool. Not quite so much in this one, but we got the voice at least. A couple of the original actors didn't come and do this. The actor who played Dr. Smith didn't want to be a cameo, he didn't want a walk-in part, which is fine, and young Will Robinson, the actor who plays him now, Bill Mumy, I remember his name, he wanted to play adult Will in this, and they wouldn't let him, so he didn't come back. The Jupiter 2 as well, also at first looks like the original Jupiter 2, but it's the Jupiter 1 in this. I didn't quite get that, if somebody can explain it. There's one ship that takes off, and then the main ship breaks out of the first ship to become the Jupiter 2, which looks very different. But then, why did it do that? Because the Jupiter 2 surely needs to be able to make it through atmosphere as well, so I didn't understand that, but it was nice to see the original Jupiter 2 design in the film. So the film itself then. Let's start with Matt Le Blanc then. Joey from Friends, who I feel a little bit bad for Matt Le Blanc when it comes to this, because he must have thought this was it. This was his break into big time movies, and he did have a number one movie at the US box office, so he succeeded for a brief moment. But he's not good in this. He lacks any kind of nuance, I think. He's just so on the nose. The best way to watch this film, and it became a lot more enjoyable for me when I figured this out, is to imagine Matt Le Blanc is playing Joey from Friends, and Joey from Friends is starring in a Lost in Space movie, but is a bit out of his depth. That's what this comes across as. If you watch it like that as well, it's great. It's great fun. Just watch little Joey-isms, like smell the fart and things like that. He's all over them in this one, and that's really the best thing I can say about him. The original Dom West it was smooth. He was a smooth guy and he was cool, but with Matt Le Blanc's version of him, they've gone so far over the top about who this guy was that he's not very likeable. Like, he's instantly making crude, cringy comments about Judy Robinson and how he'd like to share her stasis pod.
Judy, I want to introduce you to Major West. He's going to be taking Mike's place.
How you doing?
And trying it on with her at every single moment that he gets, and trying to look cool as he's flying the Jupiter 2, but not doing a very good job at it. It's badly cast. He's poorly cast. It shouldn't be Matt Le Blanc doing this role, but it's 20 years ago. You can't complain about it now, but yeah, it doesn't hold up, and I don't remember it coming across that well at the time either. And truthfully, I don't want to single out Matt Le Blanc because nobody's really that good in this. I mean, you've got Gary Oldman, I can't remember what status Gary Oldman was about 20 years ago. I mean, now he's Oscar winner, Gary Oldman. But I'm not sure what sort of movies he was doing back then. But if they were all like Lost in Space, then he's come a long way. He tries to do a Jonathan Harris, who played the original Dr. Smith. He tries to do that kind of personality with him and tries to mimic some of the lines and some of the way he said things. But it doesn't come across that way because he doesn't have the charm. Jonathan Harris portrayed Dr. Smith as a character who was pretty horrible, pretty self-centered, but at the same time, I can kind of understand why Will's friends with him. Like, you want to punch him, but at the same time, he makes you laugh a little bit. This version of Dr. Smith doesn't have that. He's just a dick. Like an absolute dick. And then they turn him into a giant spider. I have no idea why. There's no arc for Dr. Smith here. He starts as an idiot. Well, not an idiot, but not a very nice person. He continues to not be a very, very nice person. And he ends the movie as not a nice person. Like, there's nothing to him other than the fact he's a panto villain. And to have him turn into this literal giant spider, but it just sums up that he's a nothing villain. Like, and Dr. Smith, for better or worse, was the most memorable character, apart from the robot, in the original series. Not so here. But then everybody else is bland across the board as well. William Hurt doesn't convey anything when it comes to John Robinson. He's like he doesn't want to be there. There's no passion involved in the performance. There's no emotion shown. He's just very much a cardboard character. So Mimi Rogers, what does she do in this? She didn't do a great deal at all, which is a shame because Mimi Rogers is a great actor. But here, nothing. She's given nothing to do whatsoever. Heather Graham, as well as Judy, I like that they made her job to do with the mission. They made her an integral part of the Jupiter 2 and of where they're going and what they're doing at the start. But then as the movie goes on, that becomes irrelevant. It's not really used again. And there's a whole section actually in the last sort of 45 minutes of the movie where the female characters are barely seen at all. They're not out on the mission. They're not there for the climactic final act. They're just back on the ship waiting. Like, all of them. Not one of the female characters goes out and joins them for this final fight against future Will and giant spider Dr. Smith. Yeah, this isn't a very good script or story. There's a couple of other actors as well then. So Lacey Chabot as Penny. Oof. Oh dear. Not great. When she first appeared on the screen, it was like nails on a chalkboard.
This mission sucks. I don't want to leave early. I don't want to go at all.
We will discuss this at dinner.
For the last 3 years, I've missed everything. Training, so I could spend the next 10 years missing everything else.
It was horrible. It just went through me. I was like, oh, hopefully this is just the start. She's not going to get any worse.
On this eve, before she's torn from everything she knows, kidnapped, hurled into deep space against her will. What thoughts fill the mind of the daring space captive?
I mean, credit to them for getting ahead of the game on vlogging, for seeing that coming. But who's she vlogging for? She's gone. out into space, yet she's still vlogging. Never understood why. Never understood why she was doing that. But it doesn't change the fact that she's a pain. She's not a fun character. She's not a good character. She's irritating. Maybe not quite as much as Will Robinson, though. The original Will Robinson, yeah, he was irritating too. Like he was. As a kid, I didn't notice it. Watching back Lost in Space now, because I do that, he's not fun. He's not fun. He's an annoying child. But with this Will Robinson, they've turned that up to 50. Like, this Will Robinson knows everything. He's smarter than all of them aboard this ship, including his dad, who's a professor. Will's smarter than him. Listen to Will. Will can do anything. Will can build a time machine. Will can be a crazy long-haired future hermit Will living with a giant spider. But he's still got science skills. He hasn't gone insane because he's Will Robinson and he's perfect, and just stop. The problem here with this Will is that I don't believe he can do all the things that he's written to be able to do. I don't believe he's that smart. The actor, bless him, he's a kid. It feels a bit mean to kick on him, but yeah, he doesn't have anything about him that makes you believe in what you're seeing on the screen and makes you believe that Will's a genius. Will's just an irritating kid. That's all he is, and I can't get past that throughout the entire film. I hated him. I think he's probably the worst character in this for me. Of course, there's every possibility that it's not Jack Johnson's fault, because the script, within the opening 30 or so seconds of footage in this movie, we hear the line, "This Cold War just got hot," said with all sincerity. It's quickly followed up by, "Last one to kill the bad guys buys the beers." In fact, they're so proud of those lines in this that they use them in the music video, in the song for Lost in Space. I can't even remember who did that now. It was a dance version from the 90s.
This Cold War just got hot.
That use these lines because they're such great, monumental pieces of dialogue. And actually, in this movie, compared to everything else, yeah, they were entertaining. It's a bland script that nobody comes to life. No characters have anything about them that makes them compelling or makes me want to see them again. They're just all so forgettable. Like, the dialogue in this movie is just... any of the scenes between Matt Le Blanc's character and Heather Graham's, there's supposed to be chemistry there. There's supposed to be spark. There's nothing. There's nothing at all. Of course, that may be forgivable if there was a good story. Nope. Well, okay, to be fair, this movie starts pretty well. Like, dialogue aside, and the horrible whoever they were fighting at the start of this movie with Matt Le Blanc and Lenny James, randomly. He's the one that delivers... it's Morgan from The Walking Dead. He's the one that delivers the Cold War line. It's a career best line for him. Once that's out of the way, and the Jupiter 2 actually takes off, like, this isn't too bad. It actually sticks quite close to the original pilot for the 60s show. Dr. Smith's on board as a stowaway, slightly different circumstances to this one though. Everybody goes into stasis, they're awakened from stasis, they find themselves lost in space. It follows a very similar path, and while all that was going on, I was quite interested in what was happening. Like, the film looked surprisingly good as well. I had the HDR Plus setting on my TV turned on, so that may have affected it. But it looked great. Almost as soon as they go through that sun and get themselves properly lost in space, that's when the wheels come off. Exploring alien ships and seeing these spider creatures is boring. It's not exciting. The crash landing onto the icy planet is fine, I guess. It's probably the best bit in the last half of the movie. And then as soon as it goes into future Will and the giant spider... Lost in Space is very much a movie that's led by plot over character. They start in one place, they go to the next place, then they go to the next place, and then the movie ends. Weirdly, by the way, like, the end of this movie doesn't feel like an end. There's no real resolution to it. It's just sort of over. In fact, this really goes to show that Lost in Space should be a TV series rather than a movie. In a movie, there's not enough time to even barely get them lost in space, to even think about them trying to get home. It has to resort to weird, horrible time travel nonsense and running into future versions of themselves. It just becomes so dull and messy. There's no time to really invest in who these people are. There were, to be fair, a couple of bits late in the movie that I did enjoy. Old Will saying goodbye to his dad and sort of sacrificing himself was fine. I didn't quite get how that worked, because if Will died in the spaceship taking off, then how did future Will exist? This is what happens when you play about with time travel. You don't know what you're doing. On the whole, though, this is a terrible version of Lost in Space. The original series is hardly a classic. Like, it's fondly remembered by people like myself who watched it as a kid. But if anybody was watching it for the first time now and they saw some of the stories that they did and some of the performances, eesh. But it's something that's beloved by a lot of people. It's something that needs to be given respect because of that. And it looks like that's going to happen with a Netflix series, and I can't wait to watch it. Lost in Space, the movie, though, do yourself a favour. Go watch the Carrot episode from the 3rd season of the original Lost in Space, because it's much more enjoyable.
I don't see anything to be happy about in being an oversized salary stock, Dr. Smith.
Be careful, Judy. Slanderous attacks on the vegetable kingdom do not sit lightly on us vegetables. Oh, no.
I'm going to give Lost in Space a 4 out of 10. Thank you for watching. This is the first video camera movie review, talking one that I've done in quite some time. I used to do them quite a bit, but I haven't done one in a while, so I'm a little bit rusty, so I apologise for that. This isn't going to be my best work, so it's probably good that I'm talking about something like Lost in Space. I hope to do some more new reviews as well and get them uploaded and continue the movies at 20. I don't know if I'm going to do every single week or not, or every single film that was number 1. But I'll give it a go. We'll see how we go. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.